Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to yet another exciting content on Technovation. Today we are going to talk about DBT tests. So if you are an ETL developer who has been using DBT for some time, I'm sure the next 45 minutes are going to be really engaging for you. So what are we going to cover? We will start learning DBT tests. We will see what all the different type of tests that DBT offers. And then we will try to fit all those different types into different type of test scenarios. At this point of time, the stage will be all set so that we can start building an end-to-end test suite with DBT tests. Before we head to the main section of the video, here is a gentle request. If you are somebody who has landed on this channel for the first time, please consider hitting the subscribe button. And if you really appreciate this kind of content, please hit the like button as well. Small gestures from audiences like you helps content creators like us stay motivated. Finally, here is how I have designed the next 45 minutes. In the beginning, we will start looking at a small Medium article where I have articulated all the theories behind this concept. We are going to spend about 15 minutes in going through that. Once we are done, we will take the learning from that theory session live onto a demo environment where we will execute end to end and see everything in action for ourselves. Thank you. Let's head over to the next section.
This brings us to the Medium article that I was talking about. I'm going to leave the link to the Medium article in the description box. As of this particular recording, the article was written 6 days ago. It has already been published on the channel. However, I have kept a quick placeholder here right at the bottom wherein I'm going to embed the video that I'm shooting right now. So by the time you are reading this article, I am sure you will see that the video has already been embedded to the end of the article. Cool. So I'm not going to go in depth because this is an article I would definitely request all of you to go in detail and read about it. I'm just going to walk through the substances that we are going to cover in the live in action session. So we're going to talk about the different type of tests that we're going to cover. We're going to talk about schema tests, semantic tests. We're going to talk about data quality checks and data validations. Now, in a typical ETL lifecycle, you generally get the data from the source, you load it to a staging, you load the data in the curated layer for doing your processings, then you finally do your aggregates in the gold layer, which is consumed by the consumer. Now, if you see, a typical source is it can be an RDBMS, it can be an API, can be a broker, can be a SaaS product. You load the data in the staging. Now the staging can be a database as well, or a platform, or maybe a simple S3 layer, right? But then in the curated layer, you would definitely need a DB support if you are working with structural data or structured data. You will need a DB support. Maybe you can use Databricks, you can use Snowflake, BigQuery, or Redshift, or maybe Synapse as well, right? Finally, in your gold layer, when your data transformation in the curated layer is over, you push the data to your gold layer wherein you do your aggregations. Now, when I talk about aggregations, you can again use in-memory processing like your Spark, or maybe you can use the support of any databases. Now, coming to the tests, schema test is something which you perform soon after the data is loaded to your staging. You bring in the data from the source, you persist the data in the staging layer, and then you perform your schema test before you start the structured data processing layer, which is the curated layer and the gold layer. Now, well, you can do your schema test with a small sample of the data which you pull from the source before even you pull everything from the source as well. I have seen that happening in while I was working for some telecom customer, because the data sets are huge, right? So even before you pull the data to your staging, just to ensure that you are pulling the data with the right semantics, you want to pull a very small sample of the data from the source, perform your schema test, and then certify that your schema tests are good before you push it to the next level. I've seen that happening. Right. Data quality is something which you perform once the data comes to your staging. You can do that before you start the curated layer, or maybe after you complete your staging layer as well. It doesn't matter at where exactly you want to perform, as long as your use case supports it, right? And finally comes the data validation testing. This is generally performed on the gold layer. Now in our example, we don't have a gold layer, we are limiting ourselves to the curated layer, so you will be seeing me performing data validation on the curated layer only. I did not, just to make it simple, I do not have a gold layer in my sample use case. Now data validation can be on a single table, it can be on multiple tables. It is more about the completeness and the meaningfulness of the data that you are trying to deliver to your consumers. So before your consumer even looks at it, you are going to give a certification to your consumer that, hey Mr. Consumer, the data that you are going to receive has passed through all the validation tests that you had requested for, right? That gives more confidence on the data to your customers. Now let's talk about DBT tests a little bit. I'm not going to the very basics of DBT tests. I assume that you are already aware of DBT tests, or if you are not, kindly consider looking at the documentation for DBT tests. What we are trying to cover is what are the different type of tests that can help our life easier while implementing the test suite, right? DBT expectations. Now if you are aware, DBT expectations is very much in line with Great Expectation Python package. Now DBT expectations has a lot of inbuilt test scenarios. Here we are using the test scenario which says that to challenge the structure of the data. So in DBT expectation, you can set an expected structure of the data and you challenge the incoming data against that expectation that you have set. If it matches, you're good. If it doesn't match, it raises an alarm, right? That's the only place that we are using DBT expectations. Now, well, you can use DBT expectations for multiple cases, but I found out that this is the best scenario wherein DBT expectations fits in my use case. Maybe I will be using more of DBT expectations later if I have more complex use cases. Coming to DBT generic test. Now, as you might be aware, DBT already offers you a couple of DBT generic tests like null checks or your uniqueness test or value test, a list of value tests, right? But the disadvantage, as I have mentioned over here on the right hand side, you can see disadvantage of this generic test is that if you want to capture the result of the generic test in a table, or wherein you are trying to push the erroneous records of your generic tests, you cannot actually capture the natural keys because it gives you a very templated query. You cannot change much in the template query. If you want to do that, you have to write custom generic test. Now this is what we are using in our sample use case, and I'm going to take you through that. It is very useful to know how do you write generic tests, but you customize them to a certain extent so that you can capture the natural keys. Now why do you need the natural keys? Because it helps you to connect back to source. Singularity test. These are very helpful to write complex test cases. If you have test cases which are not limited to a single table, you want to capture multiple tables in that, singularity tests are going to be helpful for you. We have certain singularity tests which we have used to write our validation test, and we will go to deep dive in detail. Next, so DBT gives you an option to tag your tests. What do I mean by tags? I will be able to label the tests. So I can have preload tests, I can have post-load tests. Within the post-load test, I can create further more categories like data quality and data validation, and that's what we have done. We are using DBT tags to label our test scenarios, and labeling the test scenarios helps us to invoke them the time we want them in the entire testing life cycle. That's the USP of DBT test tags. As you can see, we have I've highlighted this in green because we are using a staging layer and the curated layer, and the gold layer is something which you can implement while you do your implement your use cases. But for this particular scenario, we are not implementing the gold layer, just to make it a little simple. This is something which is immaterial to us, at least at this point of time, because anyway we are going to VS Code, open up the entire project structure and see everything in detail. But for now, let's this is more for the blog readers who will not be interested in the detailed execution. But then I don't think here is we do have any audience who is not interested in the detailed video, right? Now finally, the custom stored procedure and why do we need it. Now if you look at DBT-Test, it gives you an option to store the results. So as you can see, there is an option in the project config file which helps you to store the results to a persistent storage. Now the problem is, even if it calls it a persistent storage, it is actually ephemeral. So DBT creates a schema called DBT-Test_audit, which you can see on my mouse hover, wherein DBT redirects all the tables which are whatever the results of the DBT tests are. If it has erroneous records, it pushes those records to a table in this particular schema. But then the demerit is, before the next execution, DBT truncates that table and loads fresh records. Now in our scenario, we may not have a person or a data steward looking at those errors on a day-to-day basis after every run. So we wanted a persistent storage wherein data will be persisted forever until and unless it is manually deleted or manually dropped, right? So that is why I have a stored procedure which is written with a focus on Snowflake. However, I'm sure with the minor changes here and there, this stored procedure can be utilized for BigQuery or maybe Synapse or Redshift as well. Now, well, it uses Snowpark in the background, but you need not limit yourself to Snowpark. You can use simple pandas as well. Now what it does is it loops over whatever the tables which are there available in the DBT-Test audit schema, and it pushes the record into another table which is log model errors, where data is persisted forever. Now during the process of persisting, it does a little bit of alteration to the structure of the data. What it does is, so let's say you have a test case which says that identify all the null records for a given attribute in a table. Now what DBT does is, for that particular given attribute, if there are 100 null record, it creates 100 null records in the target table as well, in the target error table as well. So what I've done is, instead of loading all the 100 records, I am reading all the 100 records in memory and creating a JSON variant just to minimize the number of error records which are landing on the target table. So let me take you to the structure over here. So as you can see, on the target table, it is a JSON variant. It is not record by record. So every load has an instance of the error table, right, or for a particular use case. So what I've done is, I've taken that instance, pulled all the records in memory, created a variant and loading it. This is not changing the meaning. So the error records are still going to be there, just that it is not going to be there as a record, it is going to be as a JSON array, right. Moving forward, now if you are using DBT, I am assuming that you will be using CI/CD of some sort of the other. Maybe you are using GitLabs, maybe GitHub or Jenkins. Now in that process, how do you get this stored procedure created on Snowflake? Because DBT doesn't give you an option to create a stored procedure as an object. Now it gives you create object privileges for tables and views, but not stored procedures. So you have two options. You can create DBT macros, or you can use Snowflake CLI. So Snowflake CLI is something which I would advocate for, because Snowflake CLI is a next generation to Snowflake SQL. SnowSQL, it has more number of features than SnowSQL, but as of this recording, I am not sure whether DBT or Snow CLI is globally available in all the Azure instances of Snowflake or not. In AWS it is, so that is why I am already using Snow CLI. Now it is your choice whether you want to use Snow CLI or a macro, but there are certain demerits of a macro which I have already highlighted in option 1. So please do give it a read. What else? The execution steps. I'm not going to go through all the execution steps in detail at this point of time, because anyway when we go to the execution in the next section of the video, I'm going to pick up each and every statement and run them one after the other to show you the impact, right? Cool. Nothing much here to talk about. I hope you have got the theoretical aspects of what we are going to do in the next section. Okay, cool. Next, head over to the next section and we will see you in the live demo. Thank you. Let's move on to the next section. Here we are on VS Code, and before you I have the DBT package. Now this DBT package has been uploaded to a GitHub repository. Let me take you there. Here is the repository. I'm going to leave the link to this public repository in the description box. Feel free to fork it and use it the way you want. There are a few basic steps like creating a virtual environment, activating the environment, and using the requirement.txt file. Now the requirement.txt file takes care of two primary things. Number one, installation of DBT in your virtual environment, and second thing, installation of Snowflake CLI. Now here I am expecting the user to use a few environmental variables like Snowflake account, Snowflake user, and Snowflake password, because I'm not going to save those credentials anywhere on the repo. You might see me using my trial account username and password, but don't worry, it's a trial account, so it's going to go away in a few days. It uses the Snowflake CLI, and also it shows you the set of DBT commands that I'm using. Fair enough. First, let's start with the models. Now if you look at the models, there are primarily three models. So the first one is source. Let me go to the SQL. Here I am reading a part of the data using DBT SQLs, and then what is the source data? Where is the source data coming from? Now the source data is coming from the Snowflake sample database. So if I go to my Snowflake account, every Snowflake account has a sample database called Snowflake sample data. I'm using this particular database. Which schema am I using? I am using the TPCH SF1 schema, the TPCH SF1 schema, the customer table and the order table, the customer table and the order table. Now I'm not going to read everything from the customer and order table. I'm selectively reading it just to showcase the power of DBT-Tests, and I'm not going to use the all of the data as well. So you can see I am reading just the customer key and the customer market segment. In the orders table, I am reading the customer key, order date, total price, and order status. Right. Now, once I create this source model, now the source model, I am not materializing them as a table, I am materializing them as a view, because the data is already there as a table in the Snowflake sample database, right? There is no point of pulling the data and creating a table out of it. As I say that, let me go ahead and take a look at my profiles, or let me go to my DBT project. In my DBT project, I can see that I am using it as a view. Yeah, materialization as a view for my schema source, but for my model curated, I am actually materializing them as a table, because I am actually joining these two tables and trying to create some insights out of it, right? Let me go to the next model, which is curated. Here I am joining these two tables, and you can see the references, source customers and source orders. These two models are getting joined based on the customer key and the customer key of both the tables. And finally, I am doing an aggregate. What it is trying to do is it is trying to join these and group by the market segment and try to get the total price for that market segment for a given date. Yeah, a very simple use case. Now, what is this error capture module? Now, the error capture module is something which is trying to execute the stored procedure. Now, we will be installing the stored procedure in the target environment. Did I say installing? I don't think installation is the right word for creating an object. We are going to create the object in the target environment through SnowSQL, and we are going to invoke the stored procedure from the DBT post hook. Yeah, let's see how do we do that. Now, the most interesting part, the schema.yml, where all my tests are highlighted. Now, if you go over here, first comes my source customers. Now, in source customers, there are two columns. One is the customer key. Now, as you can see here, the customer key, here I have tagged it as post load and data quality. Here is a test called is unique and is unique and is not null. Now, unique is something which I am using the default DBT generic test. So, I am not going to rewrite that as a custom test. Unique is the default generic test, but not null. So, the default generic test name is not null, but I am not going to use the default one. I am going to rewrite it and use it as a custom test. So, that is why I have named it as is not null, right. Now, let us take a look at is not null. So, if you go to my DBT tests, if I go to my generic, you can see the test is not null. This is a custom test which I have prepared. Now, this is very different to the generic test, because in the not null generic test, you don't get to see all the records which are failing the test case. But here in the is not null generic test case, I am going to capture all the records which are actually failing the test case, where the test is this particular column is null, and I am not going to capture more than 100 records, because I don't think capturing more than 100 records makes sense. There can be thousands of records, or there can be the entire data set can have nulls. So, in that case, there is no point capturing so much of data in the error table. I think giving a limit of 100 is a good number to start with. Now, you can play around with numbers. You can say that, I want to capture only one record. I can capture all the records as well based on your use case. Now, the reason why I want to emphasize on this particular point, that there will be scenarios where DBT generic test is good enough to capture the error, but from a reporting perspective, it doesn't capture all what you need. So, the moment you hit that particular blocker where DBT generic test is not capturing all that you need, you will have to write a generic test, and this is how you write your generic test. Now, I could have created a generic test for unique as well, but I just wanted to create a combination wherein you are using generic test the way it is given to you by default and customizing a generic test. So, just to emphasize again, going back to my schema.yml, I am using unique as the default generic test and is not null as the custom generic test. Coming to market segment, again for market segment I am using the tag called post load and data quality. These are all quality test cases, because trying to find out if a record is or if a column is unique, or trying to find out if a column is having nulls or not nulls, generally falls under the category of your quality test cases. Moving forward on your SRC orders, now you can see here I am using DBT expectations. So, as I was saying, I wanted to put a structural test that I want to ensure that when I am reading data from a particular table, it adheres to a particular structure. And here you can see that I have mentioned the column list. So, you can see customer key, order date, total price and order status. Now, let me tell you, I have deliberately given a different name to the column. So, the actual column name is O underscore customer key. So, if you go to my source, if you go to orders, you can see I'm reading O underscore customer key. However, in my test, I have mentioned just customer key. That means if I run this particular preload check, it is going to fail. So I want to show you how it looks like, and then we will correct it and then move forward. So this is a part of my preload schema check, right? Now you can include or you can incorporate a schema check for the other models as well. Just for simplicity, I am implementing it for one model. What next? For the value of order status, there is a list of values that I want to test with. So I'm expecting the values to be placed, shipped, completed and returned. If there is any other value apart from this particular list, then it is going to throw out an error. And again, this is a part of my data quality test. So till now we have covered two types of tests. One is a schema check and the other one is a data quality check. Now let's move over to data validation test. Now for data validation, I am using singular tests. So if I close this and if I go to my SRC, you can see there's a singularity test which says if my total order is lesser than 10,000 rupees or 10,000 units, let me be precise, because I don't think I'm using INR anywhere. It is all about some given unit. So it's if it is less than 10,000, if the total value is less than 10,000, then it is considered to be an error. Now maybe business case wise that may not sound a very good test case, but just to showcase that how do we use singular tests as a part of your data validation, I have taken the scenario. You are welcome to change this particular scenario. You can make it, let's say the total order, total price is negative. So you can say that it is less than 0, right? That's also possible. You can change this particular SQL and it works for you. On the top, you can see stored failures as table. All the failure records are going to be redirected to a new table or an error table in the DBT-Test audit schema, and it is going to be persisted over there. So post load, it is tagged as post load and data validation. There is another data validation test which I have included. Let's go to my curated. Now here it says that your order date greater than current date. So if your order date is greater than your current date, then there is an issue with the record, because current date is today's date, right? Here we are on 8th of December. So if your order date is greater than 8th of December, then definitely there is an issue, because this data set has been taken from a sample data set, and it is highly unlikely that there could be a record which is created after 8th of December. So that's a futuristic case, and definitely it is not an invalid case over here. Again, it has been tagged as post load and data validation, and the store failure as has been labeled as table. If I go to my dbt.projects, you can see that for the entire project, I have ensured that the stored failures is true. That means I'm going to save it. Now, this is an extra precaution I have taken, that for all the singular tests, I have written a specific config at a test level which says that stored failure as table. Now, you can stored failure as a view as well, but I don't think that is the right way to capture test, because as I said, I want to ensure that all my test failures are captured for a longer period of time until and unless they are deleted, because you cannot expect a data steward or the support engineer to look at your tests as and when they occur, right? They might come back maybe after a period, after a specific frequency, and to check around and find out what all the loads that have failed, right? Now, quick look at my profiles.yml. As you can see, I am reading the data from my Snowflake variables, Snowflake account, Snowflake user, Snowflake password and Snowflake role. These are the environmental variables that you will have to create, because the username and password are not stored anywhere in this project, right? It's all from the environment. So to begin the execution, let's go ahead and start creating the database first. I'm going to create the database. So if I refresh this, minimize this particular one, and I don't see that there's a database called DBT-Test demo. Let me quickly go ahead and create the DBT-Test. I'm going to create a schema called DBT-Test report as well. And I'm going to create a schema called SRC and a schema called curated. Let's refresh it, and as you can see that these are created. So I have a schema called SRC, I have a schema called curated which is blank, and I have a schema called DBT test report. Okay, moving over. What's next? To start execution of the DBT model, the first thing that we have to do is to set the environmental variables for the target database credentials. Let's do that. If I go to my GitHub repository, here you can see that there are few export commands: export Snowflake account, export Snowflake user. So I've already prepared the username and passwords and kept it on my Sublime. So here you can see the export Snowflake account, user, password and role. So don't worry, I'm exposing my username and passwords for the target account. Nothing to worry about. This is a demo account or a trial Snowflake account. Anyway, this is going to expire in a couple of days. Let me copy it over and let me head to VS Code. I'm going to run it here. Yeah, they're done. Now I'm going to check the connectivity. So to check the connectivity, the first thing is to run dbt debug. Yeah, let me run this. So as you can see, I'm not using the default profile. I'm pointing the profiles directory to the current working directory so that I can use the profile files here on the left hand side, profiles.yml. Yeah, all connections okay, and we are good. What's next? The next thing is we're going to run the first model, which is SRC. Let's go ahead and do that. Clear? So dbt run, select SRC. I'm going to run the first model. Shouldn't take much of a time. It has started the execution process, creating the views. The first view is a success. The second view is also a success. And let's quickly head over to the Snowflake account and let's check it out for ourselves. If I refresh this, if I go to my, it's taking a little bit of time. Okay, I can see the views over here. So I have the SRC customers and SRC orders. So here are few, okay, let's go ahead and query one of them. So maybe I'm going to see select star from DBT-Test demo dot src dot src customers, right? If you want to do that, I should be able to see it. If I want to do a quick count star, there you go. There are 1,50,000 records out here. Cool. So we have the two views created, which are a part of my source schema. Now the next thing, I think we're going to run a little bit of tests here. Yeah. So the next thing is DBT-Test schema check. Now as I told you, that's going to fail because I have deliberately made a mistake out there. So let's go ahead and run it. Clear it off, and I'm going to paste it. I'm going to run only those tests which are tagged as schema check. And right now in our use case, there is only one test which is tagged as schema check. Again, just need to wait for a minute. Execution has started and execution has failed. And as you can see, as the execution has failed, it has also logged the failure records into a table called DBT expectations, SRC, order, columns. Let's go ahead and execute this particular statement and let's see what's there. Let's go ahead and do it. I think that thing is already here from the previous executions, but let's go ahead and take a look at it. So as you can see, the relation expected O underscore cust key, but then the input column was cust key. This is a very, very important test for any ETL pipeline, schema test or a structural test. I would say we need to do it for all the views or all the first level models while reading the data from the staging, so that your rest of the processes are taken care of from any schema failures, right? But for this example, I've just implemented it for the customer table. I think, did we implement it for the customer table? No, we implemented it for the order table, but ideally we should have implemented it for the customer table as well. Now, if you run it as a part of a pipeline, then as your DBT test will fail, it will not move to the next section. So if you are running it in Airflow or maybe Astronomer, or maybe you are just executing these commands line by line as a part of your DBT CI process or CD process, then on the third step it's going to break off and it's going to say that, okay, I'm not going to proceed any further because the schema tests did not pass through. Fair enough. Let's go back and I'm going to change this. I'm going to go to not the macros, I'm going to models, schema, and I think it's all here. I have to make it O underscore and save it. Fair enough. Now, before I run it again, something which we should take a look at. Let's go back to Snowflake again. Let's do a refresh. And you can see there's a schema called DBT-Test audit. If I go to DBT-Test audit, there's one table right now, which is this, right? Cool. I'm going to clear this and run my DBT schema check again. And this time, I'm sure it is going to be successful. So while it runs, let me pull the next command. So the next command is, I'm going to run the curated model. Let's go ahead and execute it. Yes, the schema check did pass. So I'm going to clear it off again, paste it. Okay, before I run it, if I go back to my Snowflake demo account again, right now you can see there are two records, right? If I refresh it, you will see that the records are gone. Because as I told you during the time when we were going through the blog and the theoretical aspects of it, DBT-Tests does save the record in a particular table, but then the lifetime of the record in the error table is only for that execution alone. In the beginning of the next execution, DBT truncates that table and reloads the error records afresh. Right, let me run the curated model again. I think this is going to pass through. It's a very simple model, just going to do a join between two tables and give you a figure. So I should be able to see the curated table out here. Yes, the curated table here. Now let me run a quick select query, maybe a select star from DBT test demo dot curated dot, there's only one table. Yeah, so I have the marketing segment, I have the order date and the total price of the orders for that particular day. Okay, now what next? We need to move forward and see the data. We have to run our data quality tests. Now the data quality test, there's a separate tag, as you see, there's a data quality tag, and I'm going to run all the tests which are marked as data quality. Let's copy this, heading over to my VS Code, need to do a clear. Yeah, I'm going to run my data quality tests. Now, if you remember from my schema.yml, there were 3 tests which were marked as data quality or which were tagged as data quality. This is the one, order status. The second one was for market segment, which is not null, and the third one was for is not null for customer key, and the fourth one was unique. So there are 4 data quality tests which are supposed to be executed right now. I don't know how many of them fail, but yeah, I'm sure some of them will fail because there were few failure scenarios which I had deliberately put. Let's wait. The first one passed, second one passed, third one passed. Okay, the fourth one failed, which is my order status. Let's go ahead and look at the order status table. I'm going to put it again here. Yeah, as you can see, there were values like P, F and O, whereas my expectation was absolutely different. What did I expect? My expectation was placed, shipped, completed and returned. Now, and it is given me for the value P, there are these many number of records, F these many number and O as these many numbers. Fair enough. At the same time, if I go to my DBT test audit schema, I can see that 4 new tables have been created, and each of these new tables are having all the error records captured. Now, how are they captured? Okay, it's not showing any records. Okay, so it created the tables, but there are no records because there were no failures. So good thing, DBT is creating the error tables, but DBT is not loading data into the error tables unless there are no errors getting reported. Now, I think there's only one table here which will have the data. Yeah, 3 records. So if I go here, you can see P, F and O. Fine. What's next? I'm going to run my data validation reports now. Data validation tests. Let's do a quick cleanup again. How many data validation tests were there? Going back to my schema.yml, I think there were 3, right? No, sorry, for curated there was 1 and for SRC there was 1, right? I'm going to run it. Yeah, the first one has started running. Yes, it has failed. The second one has failed as well. So failed 100 because if you remember there was a limit of 100 records, right? So the second one, the first one it says an error. So maybe I would have, okay. So it says a DBT compilation error wherein it says order dist order key. So it is not able to find that identifier, right? So let's go ahead and fix it. So it is like I have to go to my first current date. So if I go to my current date, it says some order key is not available. Now, what does it say? It says, where was that error? Okay, order key O underscore order key is not present. So for that, let's go back to my DBT models. I'm going to curate it and O underscore order date and O underscore market segment, right? So order key is not present. We couldn't bring in order key. Now I'm not going to spend time much in getting the order key because if I have to get the order key, I'll have to order by. So I'm going to make order key. So I don't need the order key. I may need the order key and order date, but here I can see I have the market segment and the order date. So from distribution where order date and order date, so let's say let me get the market segment, right? Let me copy this and let me put it here, C underscore market segment. So my SQL fluff is going to make some noise. So what I'll do is I'm going to write it in this way. So this is like C underscore MKT and segment. I'm sure this is going to run. So C underscore MKT segment where this, and yeah, we should be good. At this point of time, I'm going to run it once more. I don't know, while I was making the experiments, maybe I would have done something. Okay, the first one did pass and the second one failed as expected, right? So if I copy this, go to my Snowflake and run it here. Sorry, I did not copy the entire thing. Paste it and run it. Okay, so these are the order keys based on which the total price has been reported as less than 10,000, right? So my test case was report all those order keys where, or give me all those records where the total price for that particular market segment was less than 10,000, and it has actually done it, right? Moving over. Now at this point of time, if you see, there are these many number of tables. Now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 error tables. Now not all the error tables are having records, but then because we had 7 test scenarios, 7 test error report tables have been created. Now whether the scenario was successful or a failure depends on that. Records are present in each of these tables. Now the next step. Now we have to create the stored procedure so that the stored procedures iterates over all the tables, collects the records and puts it into the persistent table, right? So right now under DBT-Test there is nothing created, so let's go ahead and create it. I'm going to clear this. I'm going to head over to my thing, and now I'll have to create this stored procedure. Now if you remember, we did create the databases from here, right? Database schema, we did create it manually. Now you could have done it using the Snowflake SQL as well. Now if you go to my project structure, under database objects there is a create database as well. Yeah, I did it manually just to show you that how it can be done. However, if you are trying to replicate this, you need not do it manually. You can go ahead and just execute create underscore db.sql through SnowCLI and your database and schemas will be created. Now the next thing for us is to get the stored procedure created. I have already copied the statement. I am not going to go to the details of the stored procedure logic. I will leave it to you to go and figure it out. It's a very simple one. I'm going to run it. So it is going to use SnowSQL. SnowSQL is already installed on my virtual environment that I'm using. It's going to use the file under database objects sp underscore load error, and it is going to use the temporary connection wherein the account credentials are passed from my environmental variables. Let's go ahead and run it. Okay. It is trying to do it. Okay, so the function load dbt model underscore error has been successfully created. Let's go ahead and verify it for ourselves. If I refresh it, you can see that the stored procedure has been created. Now, as the stored procedure has already been created, it is time for us to go and execute the last model, which is error capture, because I need to execute this error capture model. So, I am going to do an error capture execution. What it is going to do? It is going to do a select one. It is just going to select, one as a dummy number, and as a post hook, it is going to call the stored procedure. Now, I really cannot call the stored procedure in a SQL statement until I am using it as a post hook in DBT. So, let us go ahead and do that. Okay. DBT run profiles and then select just the error capture. Now, if I run it, what will happen is it is going to create the schema if the schema does not exist, and I am talking about the test report schema. Now, because we have already created the schema, it is going to utilize the existing schema. It is going to run the stored procedure, and as a part of the stored procedure, it is going to log the details in a special table, which is named as log, I think model log errors. Let us go ahead and take a look at it. If I refresh it, you should be able to see that there is a table which is created now, which is log model errors. Right. So, if I go to test report, tables, log model errors, okay. Let me go ahead and place it in the editor. Yeah, you can see there are 2 records, because out of all the 7 error tables, only 2 tables had error data, errors reported. That is why it ignored the rest of the 5 tables where there were no records. It just picked up the 2 tables where there were error records. It created a JSON package and inserted as an object in the new table. Let us look at how did it do it. Yeah, this was record number 1. If you remember, for P we had this many number of records, for F of order status we had this many number of records, and O we had this many number of records. So, it has clubbed it up as JSON array, and there is only 1 record now. Similarly, for the second object also, it has wrapped up all the records and it has created 1 JSON object. At this point of time, I would like to take you to this article once more. So, if you look at the article, there is some food for thought for a future upgrade. I think I mentioned it somewhere else. Yeah, a future upgrade. Now, just to call out, if you run this stored procedure once more, what it is going to do is, it is going to execute the same thing again. So, it is not going to do a merge, it is going to do another pair of inserts. Now, as a part of a process, if by mistake, if you run the error stored procedure or error capture stored procedure once more, it is going to do the same thing again and again and again, without paying attention that it has already been executed for the given execution once already, right? Now, this is something which is a future upgrade. I am thinking about doing it, but right now you can also take this up as a challenge and get it done. Yeah. So, if you are interested to do this one, create a fork from the given Git repository and raise an MR. If I see that this is really helpful, I am going to merge it and yeah, would let your contribution be highlighted in the README as well. Okay, cool. Is there anything else that I need to talk about? Let me go to my repo once more. I think we have fairly covered everything. So, from a documentation perspective, we did execute the stored procedure. We did execute Snow CLI when we have seen how Snow CLI benefits us. I did not have a macro created. So, you can also go ahead and create a macro if you do not want to go through the CLI route. But as I said, there are few disadvantages, but if your use case supports those disadvantages, then fair enough, you are okay to live with it. And finally, this error report has been created. Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much for being a lovely audience. And if you have really liked this video, a gentle reminder to hit the like button. Thank you very much, and stay updated for many more exciting content that I'll be bringing to you in the near future. Thank you once again. Bye-bye.